right, we are live. We are recording this session. I would like to welcome everybody to today's web panel discussion, the win-win benefits of great global product design. Today we have with us Teresa Marshall, Director of Localization at Salesforce, Daniel Goldschmidt, Manager of World Readiness, I-18N Team in Cloud and Services Division at Microsoft. And my co-moderator today is David Sommer, Director Strategic Operations at Translators. And I would say, why don't we take, before we introduce each other or ourselves, why don't we take a quick poll? I'd like to know a bit more about our audience. So if you don't mind, I'm going to launch this poll right now. I currently work on the customer side, the vendor side, as a freelance linguist, a consultant, or anything else. I think we have, I took a look at the registration list before, a lot of people from the customer side. Lots of interest in this web panel today. Why don't we give it another 3 seconds, and then I'll be sharing the results. So why don't we go 3, 2, 1. Let me share the results. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but we have 43% from the customer side, 21% from the vendor side, 11% linguists, 18% consultants, and 7 other. All right, David, I'm going to hand it over to you for the first questions, and I think we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves real quick. Teresa, do you just want to tell us real quick a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Like you said, I'm the Director of Localization at Salesforce.com. I've been here for about 4.5, almost 5 years. And my team, which is relatively small, we're only 5 people, is responsible for all of R&D localization, so our products, both desktop and mobile, as well as technical documentation, anything from online help to developer guides, API guides, anything like that, and customer support material. We have a number of properties that we support to disseminate information to our customers, just any kind of information about our product and how to deal and use our product, but also, for example, what we call our Trust website, where we provide status updates in terms of uptime, releases, and everything like that. So anything R&D related. I do not own marketing. That's set up separately because it's primarily the corporate website.
Great. And actually, I think, David, I took your first question, but Teresa, how many people or direct reports on your team, and what other departments do you interact the most with?
So I have 5 people on my team, primarily project managers. I have 3 project managers that are focusing on the UI, both our main product suite and the mobile applications that we have. And I have 1 person who's responsible for the content localization, so what I just mentioned, online help, developer guides, anything that provides additional information as a tool for our customers to use our product. And then I have 1 person who's a terminologist. She is the, so to say, the forefront in terms of language quality for us. So that's it.
Great, cool. Daniel, please introduce yourself a little bit more, and also if you want to tell us a little bit more about your team, etc.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chris. My name is Daniel Goldschmidt. I'm leading the internationalization team here in the Cloud and Services Division at Microsoft. I'm here for about almost 3 years. We are part of the localization of the international team of Cloud and Services. My team is about 5 people. We are 5 people, and we're dealing mainly with the core team, with developers and the program manager of all in our division. Now, if you notice, I want to say, Microsoft is a very, very, very big company. It's actually a set of companies, I would say. The company of Windows and operating system, and the company of Office, and etc. So when I will speak about also during the talk today about Microsoft, will be about what is happening in our division, because what is the internationalization, localization is decentralized, and what we're doing is actually for our division. Clearly, we have a lot of partnership with the other divisions, but it's mainly for the Cloud and Services division. Basically, a few words about Cloud and Services division. It's about SQL Server, about Visual Studio, but it's mainly now with all the Azure platform, our cloud platform, and all the services that today everyone can get, and all the enterprise are getting, on the cloud. So that's
Great.
it.
Great, thank you very much. David, since I stole your first question, can you tell us a little more about yourself as well and Net Translators?
Sure. My name is David Summer. I'm the Director of Strategic Operations for Net Translators. I've been with Net Translators about 10 years now, long enough to see us really develop into a premier localization company. My central job is to try and find a way to bridge between the operational aspects of a localization project and the sales aspects, and try and find solutions that meet the client's needs.
Perfect. Okay, today we'll be discussing three topics. Does the dream organization exist? Internationalization is king, and collaboration. And before we tackle a first topic, I would like to ask our audience, how ready are your products for localization? Do you actually rock internationalization and localization at your company? Let's see. I'm going to start another poll here. If you don't mind letting us know to the best of your knowledge where you're at, so our panelists also have a better idea about how to potentially answer questions. So why don't we give it another 4 or 5 seconds. Teresa, what do you think? What's going to be, where's our audience going to be mostly?
That's a really good question. So I think that people would say probably somewhere between agree and not so much is where I would assume that most of us are, and including myself in that, and I can go into that in a second, why that is.
Great, and you were spot on. 5% strongly agree, 53% agree, 37 not so much, 5 not at all, and 0 not sure. Okay, that's it. I think I have the first question. Why don't we, Teresa, we'll start with you. As you can see from this slide, we came up with some criteria and definitions on what a, in quote, dream organization could look like when it comes to internationalization and localization. How do you get to a point where product and service development teams have embedded representation from international teams, or includes internationalization and localization team members in product development cycles? That's a big question. Teresa.
So I want to go back just briefly to the being spot on about what people were saying, and I think that is part of the phenomenon. For example, Salesforce, when I joined almost 5 years ago, I would say I would have been in the close to the strongly agreed kind of category. We had very good, and we have very good processes set up that were just part of a continuous education, and almost, I used to say, we hammered into the developer's brain that they have to think about international. I think it fluctuates as a company grows. I think that's the big struggle. And so I think that a dream organization is something that is out there, but sometimes you feel closer to it, and sometimes you feel you're taking steps backwards rather than forwards. We've seen a great influx of new products, acquisitions, and just a growing number of developers in our organization. And with that, sort of intrinsic information that was once in place just seems to get lost or diluted. So how do you get there? I think is a continuous effort of not letting up, of feeling, just embracing that feeling that you're a broken record and continuously going out there. And then data, I think, is the big other thing that will help in getting there. and really embedding that understanding. It's very hard to make it second nature, but I think it's just a continuous effort where you continuously have to hammer it into people's brains and do that kind of outreach. That's why I'm sort of jealous of Daniel and his team, because I have to wear both hats. I try to do that outreach, but at the same time we're running our operation, making sure that all the releases get out. And it's a constant balance, and quite often it's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, same question to you. And actually, Daniel, maybe if I heard some comments from the audience, you sound a little bit faint. Maybe if you can pull your mic a little bit closer.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
Repeat what Teresa said. It's a continuous effort. I'm looking about our division again. That is a very, very big division. Some of the team that we're working, we said it's really, we have a dream organization with those teams. From the first day of the planning, internationalization and localization is there. So, we can do all the planning. We can even check everything before even the first line of code was written. Without the team, it's not always the case. And basically what my team is trying to do, and we will be doing, is actually to use the term that we used a few years ago, internationalization is part of the DNA. We would like that internationalization, that every developer and every program manager and every product manager will understand internationalization. That internationalization is not yet another tax or whatever, let's do it for US and then we'll deal with others, but will be part of the DNA of the development. And this is what we're doing actually with a lot of cooperation with the core team, with the development team. So it's both training and evangelizing internationalization, but doing a lot of work together with the planning team to understand really what are the products, what are the services that they're going to develop in the next year or next quarter or next 2 years, etc. And then really check with them, what are the globalization, internationalization problems that they might face, and help them actually to internationalize the product from the beginning. But as Teresa mentioned, it's a continuous effort that we need to do all the time. Clearly, if we have acquisition, if we have a kind of a new reorg, if things are changing, so we need actually all the time to continue with this effort and really be sure that the products are well globalized.
Great, great.
All right. I'd like to add, sorry, Chris, I'd like to add something to that. So we, just as an example, at Salesforce, because we are completely agile, we actually work all in, due to our environment and our architecture, we're currently still in one code base, and that's a huge advantage because you can build in certain requirements that everybody has to fulfill. If you have separate products, separate product lines, separate business units, that's much more of a struggle. But either way, it's like Daniel said, it's like you have to push and continue to push that it's done early, that it's taken into account early. I have the advantage of saying, well, there's no English only launch, so you have to hit it right from the beginning. We do find issues sometimes where people have not taken that into account, but we try to build it into our processes in terms of how we develop, how we plan. Are we 100% there all the time? Probably not. But we try to continuously push for that.
Great. And Teresa, maybe if you could also pull your mic a little bit closer. But David, I'm going to hand it over for you for the next question.
All right. Yeah, this is a question for both Teresa and Daniel. We'll go with Daniel first this time. While we will discuss the importance of internationalization in the next portion of the panel, I would like to hear a little bit more about what you feel about the importance of establishing globalization processes that include checklists and best practices in order to ensure that internationalization has been implemented and tested properly before the localization begins. Daniel?
Yeah. Thank you, David. So it's extremely important for us, and actually we have a globalization or internationalization tenets and fundamentals that we publishing in most of the teams, that from day one they have process of what they need to do. So when you write the design doc or you're planning, what are the things you need to think about for globalization? Clearly, the marketing that we're doing or the evangelizing is clearly by showing also with all the country, with the market we're selling, that most of it is actually it's outside of North America. But we are setting those processes. Actually, there's owners even for those processes. So if the product is not well internationalized, actually the big question, can we continue? Can we start localization? Can we even ship the product, yes or not? Having said that, in the Angel development that lots of our team are going there, we need actually completely to change the process. It's not that we're shipping SQL Server, every 2 years or every 18 months and we have the time. Now we have products that we have releasing every week. So clearly we need completely to change this process. But the process is very, very important to understand what we need, what we need to do to make the product international before we start the localization. Now, is it working 100%? No. But it's working. It's something that we're using.
And Teresa?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we're completely agile, and with that, it comes some great benefits and some great pain points for localization. So one of the benefits is that we don't support English-only launches. So we have few exceptions to that, but everything has to be sim-shipped. It is a requirement within our process that all the languages, which are 30 right now, are included when a product or a feature is considered GA. So you can't launch unless you have fulfilled that requirement. We have some localization requirements as part of our definition of done in terms of the agile development process. And then on the technical side, for example, we have a number of test suites that run on every check-in that will throw errors and just fail if these technical requirements are not done. Agile presents huge problems in terms of testing, especially sort of internationalization testing or international functional testing. We try as hard as possible to make that the requirement and a task on every Scrum team. There are some problems with that because quite often that gets deprioritized and everything like that. And so that too is a continuous struggle. Because the team is so small, we do not own the functional testing. So we push that onto each development team. In most cases, I think that works quite well. And sometimes there are bigger issues around that. But we are only responsible for language testing, so linguistic testing. And like I said earlier, the continuous struggle is also to highlight the importance and the ownership of that. And we see teams who sort of fully embrace that, and they do really well. And then I have seen some teams that struggle with that. But yeah, we have built it into sort of our environment and infrastructure. Unfortunately, obviously, for a very quick and quickly growing company, that infrastructure changes dramatically as well. So it's also a reintroducing of that environment and building that.
David, I think maybe...
Teresa,
thanks.
David, I want to ask something, Teresa. First, Teresa, thank you. You just shared the same problem that we have with Agile, with the testing, which we're facing the same problem. But just have a question about Agile and SimShip. So actually, there's always a question in Agile, do we actually need to SimShip if we're releasing, every week? So maybe we can release a few languages and a few languages later. No, it's not that we have an answer. That's something you thought about it.
So yeah, I mean, we have a setup right now that enables us to do that. And the truth is, and this is why I always sort of, you can't see me, but I cringe a little bit when I say we're completely agile, because everybody around us is very agile, where my team is moving fast into a scenario where we're completely agile as well. So we have the advantage of, we currently support 3 major releases a year. We don't have, with the exception of the mobile teams, we don't release every 2 weeks or something like that. I think depending on your schedule, so to say, if you are really releasing every 2 weeks, I think it's very hard to sim ship. But because we have the way we're organized with the 3 major releases a year for our customers, we're able to sim ship because we have a bit of time to catch up as we do the testing in parallel with a number of other processes that typically run or are run by release management as the product is actually released to our customers.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Very good point. That's a very good point. Yeah. I think lots of people struggle with it.
Great.
Yeah, it's, we don't have an answer for that here also, but it's something that we're asking because some of the products we're doing sync ship, but the other product we're wondering you really need it. Maybe, we can, if we're releasing every week, maybe we can wait a week, for shipping, other languages. By the way, the first language it might be not the English, but it can be another language, by the way. But,
that's a very good point too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. And actually, question from the audience. Yes, we are recording this session, and everybody signed up for this webinar will receive the link to the recording. So stay tuned for that. Let me see. David, actually, I have a question for you. Since we're talking about processes, etc., I know that NetTranslators is an ISO-certified localization vendor. Tell us a little bit more what this means in terms of processes and quality control.
Well, in general, I would have to say that you have to sort of separate the standards that we adhere to understand the evolution of where we got. For instance, ISO is a set of ISO 9000. That is, it's a set of standards developed by the International Organization for Standards that establish and maintain effective quality assurance systems for manufacturing and service industries. And that's pretty much the capture of what ISO 9000 does. Essentially what you do is you define your processes and create your procedures, and then you follow those processes and procedures. So it doesn't matter what type of organization you are, as long as you follow your own procedures, then you're ISO 9000 certified, 9001. There's another more significant standard that is more relevant for the translation and localization industry, and that's the EN 15038, which really is it's a specific standard developed by the EU for translation services. Now, what essentially that does is it takes what we've defined already as our own internal processes and says, okay, if you want to be a translation and localization vendor and be certified to a common standard adopted by the EU, then these are the processes that you need to undertake. And that includes a very rigid set of procedures that really say, okay, it's not enough that you tell me what you do, because if you tell, if you're a translation vendor and you say, okay, I want to translate and then send the translation back to the customer, and that's as much adherence to ISO 9000 that I want, then you could still be certified. But the EN 15038 says, okay, you have to do translation, you have to do review, you have to do proofreading, you have to have these quality procedures. It's a much more complex set of standards which define how you can achieve a higher quality within translation.
Perfect.
So we found once we got ISO 9000, we said, okay, these are what we're doing, and then okay, let's go out and see what other standards that we already adhere to that we can that we can be certified in order to show exactly how our teams work.
Great, thank you very much. And I think actually I think we're going to have to move on to our next topic since we're running a little bit behind on schedule. I'm going to launch a new poll. All right, my company has internationalization experts on staff or works with internationalization vendors. David, actually, I'm going to ask you while I'll let people answer this question. How often do you have to educate clients about the importance of internationalization? Like you as a vendor, it's like, how do people get internationalization? And then we'll ask our panelists.
Oh, wow.
Keep it 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds or less.
Yeah.
It depends who the customer is. The great majority of customers are not obviously the Salesforces and the Microsofts of the world that do their own evangelizing. The great majority are people who say, we just got a request from marketing that we have to localize this project, this product. Here's our resource files. Could you translate these, please? And then you're sort of stuck, and you say, okay, this is where the education begins. After you've already developed the English language product, after you've made all the mistakes, then you have to start educating the customer. And these are issues that we run into time and time again with the vast majority of the customers. I would say 80–90% of the customers.
Great, thank you so much. 63% answered yes, 26 no. David, I'm sure you have a question for Teresa and Daniel on this topic.
Certainly. Well, product design requirements, including relevant internationalization concepts, are considered standard operating procedures at my company. Now, this is a great and idealistic statement, but rarely practiced. Teresa, how do you achieve that?
That's a really good question. And I think it's going to sound like I'm cagey or just harping back to what I said earlier. I think it's one of those things that are continuously in flux, right? I would say that right now I have a number of teams where if I went to them and said, hey, you guys, is this true? They would say yes. And then there's a number of teams that are in the early stages. They're probably due to acquisitions, or they're just recently formed around a new initiative in the company, and they may all be coming from different Scrum teams, from different development teams, and they probably would say, well, I'm not sure. And that comes back to me, actually, right? That's something where maybe my evangelization, my outreach has not been thorough or strong enough. I think it's really finding your allies within the organization who can fight that fight for you. I have a great ally in the documentation team because they're actually on almost every, the writers sit on almost every Scrum team, and so they can be a bit of an extension of the localization team. And so they will be part of the early designs, and they will be part of the planning, and they will be there to raise a flag and say, wait a minute, we need to make sure that international is taken care of, and then pull us in. Until I have a team of internationalization evangelists that can be on every Scrum team, it's going to be a struggle. But finding these allies, old timers at the company who've gotten it, or I have the privilege of working with a CTO who's very much a fan of localization and understands that, and making use of him and his time to a certain extent to go in and say, hey, you guys need to do that on a more technical basis that than I might be able to do is another way of addressing that.
Thanks. And Daniel, how do you get there?
You have the team.
Well, first I have the team.
I figure it'd probably be a little easier for you.
Yeah, but it's actually evangelizing, I think, is the most important thing here. That everyone will understand really how, the importance of, internationalization. And this is something that we're doing. We should do even more than what we're doing today. But I think this is really, really important that everyone, that, from the planners and the designers and the architects and the product manager will know exactly what the importance of internationalization. Clearly, there are cases that we decided some international feature won't be implemented for reason of resource or reason of market or business, etc. But at least if this is a decision that was done, early in the stage, it's okay, and we can even communicate it good to our clients that and this is this languages on this market, those features won't work correctly. But we're really trying that that all the team will understand the internationalization and be part of the planning phase. Again, it's a bit difficult We don't have 100% coverage, but this is the importance of evangelizing, even in different and various and interesting ways, internationalization, that everyone will really understand the need. One of the things that we're doing in evangelizing is really showing the market, showing how much money we're doing outside of North America. And we're doing a lot of money outside of North America. And this helps. This helps just to understand, the reason that we need it. So to start really from the planning. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 100% coverage? No. But we'll get there, hopefully, soon.
I'd like to add to that because Daniel brings up a great point, for example, showing how much money a company makes or has the potential to make outside of North America. And I just recently was having a discussion why some of the stuff around localization is by now relatively well understood, but so hard to implement. And I basically said it's localization is typically an operations game. How much can you produce in little time, to what quality standard, or an analytics game. How much data can you provide to that Scrum team or development team that says, well, I'm not going to do right to left until 6 months from now. And having data that says, here's what you're leaving on the table in terms of revenue, or here's what it's going to cost you if you don't do it now. You can do it now, it's going to cost you, I don't know, a developer's time for a week. If you do it 4 weeks from now, it's going to triple. If you do it 6 months from now, it's going to, I don't know, be tenfold that kind of money and time. And it's not easy sometimes to come up with these numbers, but if you can find some sort of data, some of our biggest customers are, or outside markets, outside of North America, are actually in Asia. Even just having a conversation that, let's say, a Japanese customer just paid the same amount of money as a U.S. customer in order to get a license or whatever it is. Pointing that out sometimes makes that conversation a little bit easier. But the more data you have, the better you're going to be equipped to have that conversation.
Yeah, you're completely right. Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Actually, I think I'm going to throw in a quick question from Barry here from the audience. Can you recommend an internationalization and localization process if you had to introduce it into a new company with new products? Basically, you start from scratch. Teresa, a really, if you can, brief answer. How do you start from scratch?
You find the one engineer that is interested in international, and you have that conversation with that person and say, here's what I need in order to make this happen. I think it would be the really short answer. I would really find that ally on the technical side. I'm not an engineer, so I come from the language side, but I would have to find that ally. And then the next conversation I would have is somebody potentially a little bit higher up on the engineering side that becomes that champion as well to form a mandate. There's nothing worse than having a great process in mind or set up and outlined and designed and everything like that without somebody who helps you say this is what you guys have to do. So a mandate that says, yes, everything you do has to be internationalized by the state or by default or from the get-go.
Okay. Let me one quick question. Do you use what kind of tools when it comes to internationalization or localization would be useful right at the beginning?
Well, the amount of tools that we have in Microsoft is quite enormous. But for the let's focus on the internationalization, less on the localization platform. For the internationalization, we have a static code analyzer, which are really helping us to scan the code, before the build system and try to identify, internationalization problems. And some of the team are using it, and it's very helpful because we can discover not 100% of the problem, but there's lots of coding problems that might actually affect the internationalization of the product, and we're using it. And this is part of the development environment. So whenever the developer is actually wants to check in the code or even reviewing the build, get warnings or errors about the globalization, and then we can fix it. Kind of new bugs in the code. And this is actually very useful tool.
Great.
So we have several.
Yeah, I bet. right. David, why don't we do one more question on internationalization, this topic, and then move on so we have some time
Sure.
for questions from the audience.
Yeah, I think that the best way to learn about this is to hear some of the nightmares that have gone on. So, Teresa, can you share some of your internationalization nightmares, sort of a case study of what to avoid, and of course how you solved it?
Oh, well, the question, there's lots of nightmares. I'm trying to pick one that I can describe without having to go into a lot of like background details or something like that. What I think is a pretty general one maybe is very old code. The problem with internationalization and retrofitting code to adhere to those standards or make it ready for localization is always a big one. And in companies that have been around for a while, before they ever really see whether they want to expand into international markets, that is probably the biggest problem. We see that with acquisitions quite often, where they've been happily coding away, thinking that they're North American only, and then join a bigger company and there is a mandate to localize, and then they have to retrofit. What to learn from that, I think the only thing that you can do, since you can't really prevent it unless you come in right as they start, is to focus that early effort on fixing it, and buying the time and the resources. So really convincing that team that if they do it right now, rather than hacking it together, they will save themselves some time and hassle and money. So I just recently had a conversation about exactly that kind of acquisition, and we were able to convince management that we should actually just focus for the first 3 months or something on really fixing the code, fixing any hard-coded issues, allowing for all the text expansion in the world and all the other more complicated things around that, rather than saying, okay, rush, we need to get the first language out because there's one particular customer. It's a difficult conversation because you may be delaying that for that customer, but eventually you will get a better product or a better localized product out of it.
Right.
It's probably the most common nightmare and most common issue in internationalization localization, I think.
Right. And Daniel, any nightmares
No, I
that
don't
you
have
can
any
share with
nightmares.
us?
I don't
No.
have any nightmares. We have tons of nightmares.
I'm talking about localization, or internationalization, rather.
No, basically, internationalization. So one of the things that happened, when you look about, for instance, the database, so clearly the usage of collation is very important because we can store data in all kinds of languages, and even in many languages, in many markets, there's various collation, and we support a lot of collation. And we're doing it pretty well, but clearly some of the applications that are using the database need really to be well aware about the collation and how to use it. And one of the nightmares that we had was one of the applications that the locale of the user, and think that there's the client, there's the mid-tier, and there's the server, there might be another server, etc. The way that the locale was transferred was, let's say, it was a bit difficult. The locale of the user weren't transferred correctly. And actually, so even if the error, the message and everything was in the right language, but we had a problem of collation, which is actually problematic because you cannot find actually what you're looking for. And for us, it was a big nightmare. To solve it was really, again, going and working with the engineering team, understanding, and then actually fixing it actually was pretty easy. But we had to find, the right engineering team and really to focus on it and to try to prevent it in the future is, again, giving the right guidance and best practices, how you deal with the locale of the user, how you transform it, what will be the right API, etc.
Right.
But, yeah, the locale of the user, I think of those big enterprise applications, something very important is you want to be sure that it's well being transferred to all the components.
Right.
Great. I'm actually we're going to jump into a third topic. I'm gonna launch this poll here. Applicable members from other departments at my company are localization and internationalization aware. If you can please answer the question. And I think, David, I'm going to have you get started with the first question of the third topic here.
All right, well, while we're waiting for the poll to close,
Yep.
I'd like to ask both Teresa and Daniel, first Teresa, of course, how do you guys forge stronger team rapport for optimal collaboration, and how do you help disparate groups speak the same language and work in sync?
So I sort of mentioned some of it earlier. Because we're such a small team, because there's no way I'm ever going to have enough localizers on my team to sit on every Scrum team, we sort of forge alliances. One is the documentation team and user assistance team. They're very much embedded in the Scrum teams, and so we try to teach them and evangelize them to be at the forefront of some of the questions that come in, and sort of entice them to pull us in when they can't, when they don't have enough information. So they're a great funnel to us in terms of saying, here's where you need to get involved. We attend a lot of the typical meetings and review meetings and product design meetings where we quickly say, hey, this is okay, or here's where we need to send somebody to that Scrum team or to that steering committee or whatever it may be called. But we also have similar allies in other functions. We have a team of engineers that work on features that are a little bit more international centric, that support actually our international customers with features that are specifically designed for them. So they are a great resource for us, a technical resource for us. While they don't have the typical title of a globalization or internationalization engineer, they have some of that knowledge. Right now they're a little bit dispersed, but they also have become great allies that we can pull in when we need to. And it's really those sort of experts that we make use of. And then we do continuous outreach. We have every new hire that comes on board has to go through a series of training, and localization internationalization training is part of that. I wish it was a lot longer and had more time with every single engineer that comes in the door, but it's one step in at least raising that awareness.
Right. And Teresa, I have a follow-up question. Are you in charge of the training, or do you have somebody else who does the that kind of evangelizing?
We are actually in charge of that. So we drive that. We have a team that is in charge of all the training that happens for R&D, and this is done for all the functions, whether it's UI or documentation or whoever's part of that is done by that function. So it's either myself or one of my team members who gives that training.
So that's probably keeping you very busy. Daniel, same question for you.
Almost the same answer. No, yeah. Partially, yes. So one thing else that we're doing, so clearly the training is something that we're trying to do more and more. We're not doing it enough. I think that with the training is very, very important, really, that everyone, new hire, but also people which are there for past years, really will understand, internationalization and the needs of that. And we're also putting a champion network in the team. So again, because, we are a very small team, and the division is very big. So in the different team, we have a champion network, which are ambassadors, let's say, in the team. So they understand internationalization. They would like the product to be internationalized, and they can be the point of contact with the team for internationalization. And they know the product, they know the team, they know the development. And together with them, we can actually have a better collaboration, a better partnership with the development team. And this is actually working pretty good. We don't have it yet 100% coverage for all the team for that, but in the team that we have, those networks, it's very useful because we have bi-weekly meeting with them. We understand more what they're doing. They understand more what we want. We can discuss requirements, discuss a certain product. If there's a problem, they can, as I mentioned, be the first point of contact, but then they can bring the problem to us and can discuss things together. So it's a very good way for us, actually, a very good way to collaborate with the core team. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
Let me see. Question from the audience. If somebody, let me ask you. I'm wondering if there is an easy and quick way to let R&D guys know who are newbie at internationalization and localization understand the importance of my work. That goes back to somebody brand new, a company hasn't done internationalization, localization. How do you establish that connection with R&D, let's say at a bigger company? Daniel.
I think that's what Teresa mentioned earlier, that you first need to find it. It's good to have an engineer that's understanding very well, to start that, in the engineering team, really to help you to be part of the engineering team. And on that way, really understanding of the management, development management, why international is important. And this is by showing data. So, to have data, why it's important, why we decided to be international. Even if it's a new company, that internationalization and localization is completely new, there are data from the marketing and understanding why we need to go outside of North America. We need to show this data and understanding what is the need actually for this internationalization. And then really we need to think about how we can partner with the core team. What should be the process? We have a process for internationalization, but we have a process for everything in Microsoft. Now, some companies doesn't have, all those kind of process. Now, what should be the process actually to be sure that internationalization is part of the planning, internationalization is part of the developing itself and the testing and everything. And you need to set the process and evangelizing it. But evangelizing it is for newbies and also for everyone. Evangelizing internationalization is very important.
Daniel, do you go into other departments and give them official sessions on the importance of your work? How does it work at Microsoft? Very briefly.
Again, in our division, I won't talk about Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so we try to, we're meeting more and more even within other departments, with the core team. So as I mentioned earlier, with the champions network, but also with the planners, with the architects, with the managers, to show the case why we're here, what is the reason. We're not just another tax collector that wants yet another process, but actually the good reason that we're here. And actually we want to help, we would like to help the engineering, and just the product will be well internationalized. So yes, we're meeting a lot actually with other teams.
All right. Let me share the results. I think you've seen it. Localization and internationalization awareness, 6% strongly agreed, 40% agreed, 46% not so much, 6% not at all. Teresa, do you want to add anything? You already sort of answered this question before. Any last thoughts on this question?
Sure. So I'm a big fan of bribes. It works for my team and it works for other teams. So we get bribes when other people come and say, hey, I really missed that deadline, but I need your help to make it work anyways. And but in all seriousness, what we've done at Salesforce and what we've done, probably not often enough, but what I've done at other companies is really to have brown bag sessions at lunch. And I remember in a company before, previously, before joining Salesforce, I went to my manager and said, I'm going to order lunch for 150 engineers in a company that didn't have free lunch, and I need you to expense that, and here's why, and we did that. And people showed up, and they probably showed up because of the free lunch, but it was hard to not listen. I've given out gift cards, especially when it was something that was very new, and to in part to really sort of forge a personal connection to that one engineer that was going to be my champion. And then once I had their attention, I did, because I'm not an engineer, I did bring in an internationalization engineer from the vendor that I was working with at the time. And just to give an overview and give some sort of guidelines that would enable them to then tackle at least some of the first problems by themselves. And I was lucky enough to find somebody who really wanted to solve that problem and then evangelized on his own. We currently have sort of a system that allows us to say from one coworker to another, say, hey, thank you very much for doing this for me, or you went above and beyond for this. And so we have a localization specific batch that gets handed out. And it all sounds warm and fuzzy and everything like that, but it does work to a certain extent. I mean, you need, like Daniel said, you need data, you need the hard empirical evidence, you need that management mandate, but at the same time there's a warm and fuzziness in there that says, hey, I need you to help me do the right thing, and people are quite often incented by little things. So that's the one thing that I would add to that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Daniel, David, I think you have another question for our panelists.
Yeah, I do. This is actually a pre-submitted question from one of the participants. I'd like to know about merits and demerits of SimShip that people work in the localization industry currently feel. How do dream organizations manage SimShip these days? Daniel, we'll start with you this time.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's actually something that we're discussing here. Really, we're doing SimShip for all of the products, but now that we're going in the agile mode, trying to release some of the products, not all the products, but some of the products we're actually releasing right now on a very quick release, can be a few weeks. The big question, do we need SimShip, yes or no? Because actually, if I can release something today in X languages and tomorrow, or in 2 days, to release the other languages, is it a big problem or not? And this is a discussion that we have both with us and also with the marketing people and others. Just understand the need or the need for the SimShip. In general, I think SimShip is important. It's something which is great because the idea is really that it's not an English product that then is localized. It's a product that has many languages, that English is one of those languages. And I think it's important. But it's okay maybe that to release some languages later. By the way, when we release things very fast, some of the feature we don't release. We release some feature, a little feature every time. We don't release everything in one time. So I think that this is a discussion that needs to be done, especially with services that are developed in agile development and with very quick releases. About, do we really need the SimShip, or can we actually extend the SimShip to a few days or a few weeks?
I agree. So if I can add something to that, I think it's really important to understand why a company or a product line or whatever is SimShipped.
Yeah.
And I think it used to be a forcing, like if we go back, I don't know, 5-10 years or something, it used to be a bit of a forcing mechanism ensuring that people wouldn't cut out too far from here's English and then maybe 9 months later here's the other languages, and forced some of the earlier internationalization practices and helped as a forcing function, as a gateway to really drive that point home. But like Daniel said, depending on what is released, there may be some leeway in that, or it might be a better approach to say, let's stagger some of these languages, and it really depends on why, right? If we're doing it because we have an English-only product that somebody then decides 6 months later should be localized, then that's the wrong reason. But if we have a fully internationalized product that has been tested for internationalization and is localization and world ready, and that's staggered because, well, maybe we need some more QA or we need some more customization in one particular market, then I think that would be okay.
Great. Great. And actually, we're getting close to our end here. We have a few more minutes to take a few more questions from the audience. And Daniel, and I think both Teresa, if you guys could raise your voice a tiny bit, that'd be awesome. Let me see. Hey, Teresa, can you recommend any specific globalization checklists or best practices that somebody could download, if they're like at the starting point?
Some of the bigger companies that have been doing internationalization for a long time have some good checklists. Some of them are outdated. The last ones I was looking for were specifically about writing for internationalization. I think they had, I'm trying to remember what exactly it was. I can't remember the URL or anything like that. I think some good resources are, I think the IBM website had some good, the developer tools, Google part. Depending on where you are, what you do, Google has some really good resources. Oracle, the old Sun stuff, has some very basic, especially sort of for a beginner, helping to understand that. Website as well. So those are the ones where I would start. A lot of the sort of consortium ideas have great resources, and a lot of the vendors. David, I'm sure you have some website or at least some sort of basic information that you probably provide. I don't know whether that's public on your website or not, but there's actually a lot of information out there. It can be a little bit tricky to find.
Yeah.
Okay. Daniel, any real quick, what would you recommend in terms of checklists?
The list that Teresa gave is actually the list that I was using even before joining Microsoft. Today also MSDN, we have also tips and tricks for globalization and Ask Global, etc. I think that there are lots of information there, again, if you, for coders, to understand what you need to do. Before joining Microsoft, I always thought that, it's difficult to find one big list that covers everything. I don't think does exist something like that. It's more about, what area we need to look, depending about the product and depending about what we're looking for. But I think that really the list that Teresa gave earlier and also with the MSDN can really help, to start with.
Great. And David, you can add a little bit more, but you guys have done a number of these web panels now and webinars, so maybe that's a good way to start. Those are available on your website. David, any other recommendations?
Well, I think that the list that Teresa and Daniel gave is pretty comprehensive. Daniel, I would also take a look at the Microsoft site. I think there's some resources available there too.
Yeah. This is MSDN that I said, the Microsoft.
Correct. I meant MSDN. Right. So those pretty much cover what's available outside of course, books that are available obviously on Amazon.
Okay, and we have time for one more question, and I think it's an interesting one. What did Daniel specifically change to accommodate agile development cycles? And Teresa, I think you can add as well a lot to that. Let's start with Daniel, agile development cycles.
So what was the question?
What did Daniel specifically change to accommodate agile development cycles? It was, I think, it was at the beginning where you talked about it.
Yeah, well, when we think about the waterfall system, so we know we have now a month or 2 months of planning, and we can set what we're going to do, and then the developer can start develop, and we have time to come and check what they're doing, and we can have gates to check the quality, and we have time for testing, and we can decide that they can. We can release it or no. I want them to spend a few months to fix or a few weeks to fix bugs. Oops, we change it, releasing, every week or every month. And then so the whole process changed. We don't have time. I think Teresa mentioned, for instance, the testing. We don't have now time for internationalization testing. Or if we do it, how are we going to do it? What exactly we need to test the things. So it's a lot about be part of the planning, and with the same, as Teresa mentioned, we don't have people can be in all the Scrum meetings and all the planning meetings, but working closely with the engineers about this, and change the whole, because the whole time frame just changed completely, and we need to be very, very, very fast, and we need to be agile too, actually. Teresa, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things where you take steps either to work your way towards it, and I think as much as I don't really like it, that's what we're doing. So like I said, because of how our releases work, Localization was one of the few teams that isn't agile. And translating every month or every sprint or everything. But we did certain parts that we're pushing into the Scrum teams already, where we say internationalization testing or localization readiness testing has to be done within those sprints, and it's a sort of a mindset that you need to change, and unless that is really embraced, it's really hard to follow up with any kind of process changes. What we're doing right now is like we're pushing for that, and we're actually starting to translate on a more rapid basis. And it's really hard to say here's the solution for that. I wasn't at Salesforce when we went agile, but I know it was done in this sort of let's tear the Band-Aid off kind of way, which I think was probably the only way to do it for a larger organization. But I would say in terms of piloting localization around that, I think maybe a smaller subset of it is a good idea, which is sort of what we're trying to do right now, just to figure out where the pain points are that we may not be aware of, because there's always going to be something that you didn't think. For us, it was, for example, how our code lines are branched and everything like that create big problems that we just haven't thought through enough, and that we're trying to solve right now.
Yeah.
Great. We're 3 minutes over. I thought it was a great session. Teresa, Daniel, David, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Translators is doing these web panels and webinars, I think, on a bi-monthly schedule. Any last words? Just like anything else, Teresa, Daniel, David?
Well, good luck. It's a very interesting subject. I think internationalization and localization are very, very interesting because we're merging both technology and culture together. So enjoy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would echo that, and I would add to that saying thank you to you, Chris, for organizing it. It was definitely a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a blast. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Net Translators, for hosting this session, and join us again next time. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.